Spaced Out Radio is on weeknights at 11 p.m. on Spreaker FM 88.9.
You're listening to Radio on GJRB Online. If you'd like to talk to Gary, on Skype at Gary.Russin. If you don't want to get on the radio, you can contact Gary via the chat room on the GJRB public site by clicking the comic book icon on the GJRB widget. And now, back to Way Out There on GJRB.
Are like words from a poet's pen. Words like love and truth and goodness. Words like till death us do part. I will never love another. Take my heart, take my heart. Take my heart, take my heart.
Okay, you might remember or recognize that song from an episode of Night Gallery. Okay, this song was in a Jukebox in an episode called The Tune at Dance Café.
Words like love and truth and goodness. Words like till death.
And that part would always skip, and then the record would stop. Someone would try to select another song, and then this song would play again.
Take my heart, 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 take my heart.
The song is called If You Leave Me Tonight, I Will Cry. That is done by a guy named Jerry Wallace, and I'm not sure exactly where he came from. He's a one-hit wonder, apparently, although I think he had some more songs he recorded. But that song was well known for the episode of Night Gallery in which that happened. Now, a fellow in Missouri purchased a jukebox that apparently has that song on it. He is a collector of a lot of things. His name is Richard Loban. He reportedly purchased this 1954 record player, other one, the Jukebox, and noticed something about this classic piece almost immediately as he randomly ejected some records when he plugged it in the first time. And as an electrical technician, he made it was a skeptic of the supernatural. The collector first thought that it was not the machine that was possessed, but simply it had a broken part. Well, he remedied that issue, but it turns out the tale of the strange jukebox has just begun. According to Loban, it has been told that the previous owner of the jukebox, that it was featured on an old TV show, but he never learned actually what specific program it was. Upon receiving the machine, which was half full of records, he proceeded to fill out the rest of the empty slots for his favorite songs, including the 1972 Jerry Wallace tune, If You Leave Me Tonight, I Will Cry. I can't pronounce that. Anyway, he did some research into it, and Jukebox was a brief star turn on the television series, and determined that probably appeared in an episode of Rod Serling's Night Gallery episode. An episode in which was called The Tune at Dance Café. Okay. In that episode, watch the particular episode, and Love Band turned out to be the plot centering around a possessed jukebox that plays one song that haunts the main character due to his failing marriage. If You Leave Me, I Will Cry added another astounding twist in the tale. That both the program and in real life, the song is selected as G5, which is something that Lil Band had no idea about when he loaded the record into the jukebox. And he said he was floored and when he saw that and marveled at it, and also got shivers. And beyond that, truly baffling thing, Lil Band says that the jukebox sometimes starts on its own, and so far it had to replace the electronic workings in the device in order to fix it. But the problem the puzzling problem persists. Additionally, that the machine only plays 3 songs. One of them is, of course, the one song I just played. If You Leave Me Tonight, I Will Cry. Although the friends suggested that it was something paranormal afoot on the jukebox, he concedes, quote, I just necessarily believe that sort of thing, but he said it coincides with the explanation of the machine's odd quirks and mystifying connection of the song featured in Night Gallery. So, he actually bought the record player, the jukebox, and had that song on it that I just played. And actually, in the episode, if you listen to the beginning of this song now, listen to this beginning of the song, okay? That opening that you're hearing with the background vocals is not on that episode, okay? It does. You don't. Okay. In the beginning, you don't hear this part in the episode. The opening background singers with the introduction. Okay. It starts out cold. Okay. It starts out cold. So apparently, I don't know if it was just a different version or they just decided to start at the vocal. But it would go like that. Now, interesting. This episode stars Pernell Roberts, and let me see. I'm going to go to my Let me go to my YouTube. Let me go to my YouTube a minute and pull that up. Because what's really interesting about this is I've seen this episode at least since I started watching Night Gallery, which is a really good series too. I mean, it wasn't quite as good as The Twilight Zone, but Night Gallery was a good series. I used to watch it all the time. It was one of my favorite shows. And reruns, I used to watch it, local TV station back home. Channel 53 used to run it late at night on the weekends. It was a great series. I used to watch it all the time. Fabulous show. Anyway, going down there, down the page here, I am going to play you a clip from that episode. Real quick here. I'm going to go down to that particular clip. It should be on here, because I know I had saved it. I mean, it's further up. No, I had. Here it is. I think it's in this particular piece here. Right here. Okay, let's see. It's right from this clip. Okay, right about the time Pernell Roberts says something about remembering a moment that he had. He walks up to the jukebox. Walks up to the jukebox and says,
Kelly? You'll never guess what they've got on here.
Roy, you're gonna wear that record out.
You remember that song we kept playing the first night we met? Starlight Ballroom. Who was gonna tear the world apart, huh?
You.
15 years ago. Hello there, my name is Joe Bellman, and you are beautiful. Remember that?
If you leave me tonight.
Oops, wrong song.
Though you say we'll soon meet again.
It's not what I claim.
For the hours I've spent here with you are like words from a poet's pen.
Start skipping about this
Like
point.
love
I didn't see that one on here.
and goodness, words like till dead.
The record kept on skipping in that same part, so the jukebox would end up changing it, but it would go right back to the same song.
Why should the jukebox work? Nothing else has.
Well, just try something else. Anybody here?
Bizarre.
If you leave tonight, I will cry. Though you say we'll soon meet again. For the hours I've spent here with you are like words from a poet's pen. Words like love and truth and goodness. Words like till.
And the record, it just kept on doing that over and over again. The jukebox kept on playing that same clip, same song. But that's a clip.
Particular painting, Death's Head hovering over Jukebox, but it does point out the all-inclusive quality of the occult. Phantom specters can be found not only in haunted houses, but in places you'd least expect to find them. Places like this. Our painting is called The Tune in Dan's Café.
There you go. Great episode. I think that I got to tell you, that is an eerie episode. But it is one of my favorite episodes of the Night Gallery. Other than the episode with Artie Johnson's a disc jockey in his radio station that was only on during the night. Remember that one? But yep, The Flip Side of Satan. That's another good episode. But anyway, there's like 2 or 3 really good episodes in Night Gallery, and there's like 3 or 4 of them. That's one of them. But anyway, strange story. But this guy actually has that jukebox, and I guess it has some malfunction, and then it skips in the same spot. Bizarre. Anyway, so there you go. Weird stuff here on Way Out There on GJRB Online here on Spreaker, and have not seen too many people out there tonight yet so far. I was hoping maybe we'd be getting some people live here, so probably in the next break I'm going to try to see if we can get some people in the second hour, because we will continue our ongoing series on Technocracy. And talking about that, Technocracy Rising, a book that was written by Patrick Wood, talking about how technology is being used to manipulate minds, do things that, otherwise, using technology to control the masses. And it's possible. I wouldn't doubt it. With a lot of these smart meters, smartphones, electronic equipment of some kind, more than likely they're probably doing something to manipulate us in one way or another. So we're going to talk about that coming up, and a whole lot more other good stuff. So I hope you'll stay with me Way Out There on GJRB Online here on Spreaker. And if you like our show, hit that like button. And I'd love to hear from you tonight. And we'll see. I'll throw another song in here so that maybe I can kind of boost this show around. Otherwise, I'll wait until Technocracy Rising is on, which is kind of a lengthy piece. So we'll do it then. Let's see if we can find some more interesting weird stories from the bizarre and the weird. We could do that. And see what's happening there. And then coming up, I'm going to play you Slap Ham. Got a couple of really weird stories there that you're going to want to hear. Some interdimensional travel stuff, especially. So you're going to want to check that out. Let me see here. I'm going to go to my Coast to Coast site and see if I had that story. Let me see. I'm going to click out of this one. And I'm going to go into Coast to Coast. See if I can get it quickly there into my, let's see. George Norrie. Okay, I'm going to go to his site. I usually know I will go down to his page. And while we're thinking about it, yeah, that's a spooky song in it. But you know what? That's not a bad song. It's a sad song, kind of. But what's really weird about it is, and it kind of gave me the chills when I heard it one time, watching an episode of Night Gallery while being on vacation with my family down in Florida. And listening to the car radio one time, just out going for a ride with my parents, and listening to the country station down there, which I think was WQYK, they played that song. It was on their rotation. They used to play it. And I thought, wow, wait a minute, I know that song. That's from Night Gallery. Holy cow. It was weird to hear that on the car radio. Being played over the over a radio station in Tampa. I thought, wow. And I never heard it anywhere else, strangely enough. I've never heard it on in Pittsburgh radio that I know of. Never heard it anywhere else but that one time in Florida, listening on Tampa radio station. It's just really weird how that come out like that. But anyway, you're listening to Way Out There on GJRB Online here on Spreaker, and thank you so much for listening to the program. Always glad that you could join me for the best in Internet Talk Radio. And we're going to do some more strange news. But coming up here in just a little bit, we'll have Way Out There continues with Technocracy. And then coming up in the next hour, also be Linda Moulton Howell and her Earth Files. And we'll have that coming up. And various other interesting stuff here. Let's see what we got here. Anything else weird that we can pull up? Marsquake detected by NASA's InSight lander. Talk about that later. I'll pull that one up for the next hour. And let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see. Well, let me see here. Anything else here? Oh, a crime baby. The world of rich people. Okay, Coachella, UAE. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me see. Your corpse is likely getting all kinds of fun, new options. Okay, not too much weird stories this hour, so I'll look around. I'll find some from Spaced Out Radio. Sometimes David Scott has some interesting stories, so we'll look for some of those. And let's also do Dave Scott's question of the Dave. He has. They're fun to do, and let's see if we can get some answers on that. Meanwhile, I had some stuff from Keith Brooks, great country singer from the Debbie Scott Radio Network, some music. Got a few messages on there, and some stuff from Todd Starnes, so got some there. And I'm going to go back to my main page, and then we're going to do Weather on the Fives here real quick. Poor Mr. White, he blew up his amp today while he was sleeping. I blew up my amp today while I was sleeping. C'est la vie. How did he do that? Mr. White, you'll have to explain that one. Who you? That's strange. Anyway, I'll talk about that. Let's see what we got here. More interesting weather. Look at some of those. Delaware. Up in Delaware. Delaware Bay. Ominous clouds there. Wow. Let's see. The draft is going on. How about that one? In football. And speaking of which, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to be bringing back Sports Page. So I'm going to be following that draft and seeing what's going on with that. And I'll be putting a lot of that notes in for our Sports Page show coming up. And I'm trying to get a hold of Bob Huber to see if he could be on the show, talk about the draft. That'd be kind of fun. So that's all coming up. You're listening to Way Out There on GJRB Online on Spreaker on a Friday night. Let's do weather on the 5s. Take a look at some temperatures across America tonight and see what's rolling here. Tampa, Florida right now checking in 78 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Talking about that earlier. Manhattan, New York, 54 degrees. Los Angeles checking in with 70 and fair. Back home in Ambridge, it's 49 degrees under cloudy skies. Cleveland, Ohio, checking in with 53 and fair. Cedar Rapids, Iowa, right now just across the state, 62 with sunshine. Washington, D.C., 64 under mostly cloudy skies. And right here in Clinton, Iowa, it is... No, I don't believe that. It can't be 62 yet. It could be. Maybe it is. I'm going to check here. I'm going to go to the main page here and see, because somehow I don't believe that temperature. Mayor Farms, 53 degrees right now here in Clinton. 53 degrees. And weather on the 5s. Next update coming up at around 25 after 9. 9:25, weather on the 5s again. 25 after 9. 51 degrees here in Clinton. Okay. Anyway, 53 degrees. Let's just say 53. 53 degrees here in Clinton right now. And weather on the 5s, 25 and 45 minutes past each hour on GJRB Online on Way Out There on GJRB here on Spreaker. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Glad you could be with me tonight for Way Out There.
You hear great jazz on GJRB with the best of jazz, up-and-coming jazz, smooth jazz, and smooth afternoon. If you can't get enough of jazz and you live in the Quad Cities area, tune in to KALA, St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa, at 88.5 on the FM dial. Along with some of that great smooth jazz, you'll hear a lot of great jazz programming.
And programming in other great music formats.
Like blues, urban, including rap. Also classic R&B and Motown with David Baker on Rewind, Friday nights at 6 p.m. Central. In addition, you get programming in Spanish and some great gospel programming too. For more information on that great programming you'll hear, check out their schedule at www.sau.edu/KALA. Even if you don't live in the Quad Cities area, you can enjoy KALA anywhere in the world with their internet stream. Connect with KALA. Listen and enjoy.
Recently, the owner of Facebook had to face Congress over personal information on Facebook users. In addition, users were saying that their postings were being deleted. Getting sick and tired of your censorship and your data being used without your permission? Do something about it now. Come to MeWe, the internet social site that values your freedom. No more deleted postings. Make a step to freedom. Sign up today. It's easy. Go to www.MeWe.com. That's MEWE. MeWe, the internet's free speech social site. The blues, the primary start to rock and roll music. The music in which artists express their feelings through music. This is a new blues show featuring the best of the blues, with new emerging artists getting their thrill of hearing their selections played along with the greats like Muddy Waters, B.B. King, and Etta James, along with a whole lot more. The doors are open to the Blues House on GJRB. Tune in live tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock Central on GJRB.
End times are upon us, and we need to know what's happening. Knowing the truth is key to survival. There are lots of news events going on in the world that have certain significance to end-time happenings. Listen, as men and women gather to discuss the news and how it lines up with Bible prophecy on the last 7 days. Uploaded as a podcast Wednesdays and run live every third Friday at 12 o'clock noon Central on GJRB.
From America's Heartland, this is GJRB, Clinton, Iowa. And you're listening to Way Out There on GJRB Online here on Spreaker across America. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Thanks a lot for listening to the program. If you're catching us anywhere across this fine land of ours, thanks a lot for tuning in to our Way Out There show here on Spreaker. And always glad to bring you the best in internet talk radio and all-out strangeness on Way Out There here on GJRB Online. And if you like our program, please hit that like button, because I always want to get I want some responses, tonight. So that's what I'm looking for. We'll be heading into part 2 in just a little bit, about 19 minutes from now, here on GJRB Online. But meanwhile, let's take a local ID break. You're listening to Way Out There on GJRB Online on Clinton on the GJRB Online Network. And this is Way Out There. The strange, the bizarre, the unusual. We've got some good stuff coming up this hour, including the next part in our series on Technocracy. And it's an interesting story. Talking about Patrick Wood. We introduced him. He wrote a book. It's called Technocracy Rising. And it was a thing that goes way back to the 1930s. It was experimented with. They were trying to see if they can use technology to control the masses, to control and they've been working on this for some time. Mind control, whatever you call it. And we're going to deal with this episode with Interdependence. We'll have that coming up, and it takes you really gets you thinking about a lot of things, it's weird it's in a way that it's hard to explain. This technocracy, the technology that they can tell people what to do, or through devices and stuff like that, and really weird stuff there. So right now we're going to go into that and talk about this stuff, and we're going to pick up where we left off, talking about some religion and stuff like that, and different things. So we're going to pick up at that point. So it's Technocracy Rising, and they're interviewing Patrick Wood. And here's as we continue with Technocracy Rising on Way Out There on GJRB.
And so on. And they wanted to do something radically new. I think a lot of that could be laid at the feet of Charles Darwin, for instance, who really stirred the pot with his Origin of Species and book, and got people to thinking. And then communism came along. Karl Marx proposed just some radical ideas that people were talking about, and the whole eugenics thing was floating around in those early days as well. There was a competition. I view it as a competition amongst thinkers to want to come up with the newest thing, the newest, most radical possible thing that they could think up. And I think a lot of them talked in that way, like, wow, so and so, Karl Marx got, he got all this stuff about, the basis for communism. But, let's do something different. Let's think up some other cockeyed philosophy and see if we can make it stick when we throw it at the wall. So, you had technocrats thinking that way in the early days. Let's do something new. Let's not just take everything that's out there, but, let's invent some new thing. And, the eugenics movement was not a broad-based movement for sure, but it sure was testy. I'll say that, as far as being radical, having, really far-out ideas and stuff. It was really off the wall, even back for those days. And so do you see the overlap between people involved with technocracy, like I said earlier, and eugenics? It doesn't mean that eugenics was organically hooked to technocracy when Howard Scott and Hubbard actually formed the organization in 1934. But the influence is obviously there.
There was a 19th century author named Edward Bellamy who wrote a book called Looking Backward. How did that affect the big box store culture we see today?
It was a huge book back in those days and continued well into the last century. And the book essentially was kind of a story of Rip Van Winkle type story, where a guy went to sleep or was in a coma or whatever for 100 years, and he woke up and he goes outside and goes, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And all of it, like a time traveler, and he awakes in this new utopian world, and he's looking backwards to see how things have changed since he was alive on planet Earth. And it was very much a picture of technocracy and utopian system that had evolved on Earth. And it wasn't exactly a science fiction book, but it had a wide appeal just because the way it was written. People just went nuts over it. And the book had a large influence on a number of people during the early 1900s because of that. It was visionary. It was really looking forward. That is, it was kind of progressive in its nature. And I'm sure that a lot of different groups that were talking different things, including the technocrats, had a stake in that book somewhere, in that whole idea that, hey, we're planning the future here. We're going to direct the future. We're going to be the future. And whoever gets to the future first is going to be the ones that wins the future, I guess. So, the communists, they wanted to get their future, and the technocrats wanted their future, and the fascists wanted their future, and everybody was vying for what was going to be the final, the state of the world. And this book I think had a profound effect on a number of people for different reasons. Not all the same, but I think a lot of people looked at it and said, "Wow, this is we need to think about the future." And then look at it kind of from a backwards point of view, how we're going to get there.
Well, and I think maybe one of the readers of that book was a young Herbert George Wells, as he was studying under T.H. Huxley. And he's like, wait a minute, this time travel thing's interesting. Because he wrote The Time Machine, and then he wrote War in the Air, which was 1907, which predicts World War I. And then he wrote a whole bunch of other stuff, New World Order, the New Machiavellis. How does he fit in? Or did his artistic stylings influence technocracy, do you think? Or how do you think that?
I don't think so. I don't think so necessarily. Engineers and scientists, especially the ones that exist at Columbia University, and by the way, I'm thinking probably half of those people that I remember by name were German. They have German extraction, and they very much had an idea of not invented here syndrome. They wanted to do. They wanted to be their particular invention, and that engineers are just kind of that way in general. I really don't mean to stereotype all engineers, but for the ones that have this mindset that they're superior to all other men, if an idea didn't come from them, it basically is no good. So that's why we see somebody like Al Gore hanging on to global warming, when maybe even the evidence says it might be going the other way. In fact, they used the same technique back in the 70s when they called for global cooling. We were all going to die because the world was going into ice age. And that didn't work out too well. So we didn't go into an ice age. So they turned it around and said, well, it's global warming. We got that wrong. It's not global warming. We're all going to die because the seas are going to rise. And it's kind of a crazy.
It's a sales pitch. Al Gore's pitching you on a story so he can buy beachfront property at low price.
Yeah,
I've seen that happen before.
Yeah.
Fabian socialism and technocracy. Is there any connection? Is there any cross-influence? Are there cross-memberships?
The difference between Fabian socialism and technocracy, again, harkens back to how the economic system works. Technocracy was not proposed as a political management or a political system or a political form of government, whereas Fabian socialism basically merged the corporate world with the governmental system, whatever that might be, whether it was Nazi Germany or whether it was Mussolini. Even the president of Columbia University had ideas on Fabian socialism and probably would have liked to have seen it in the United States. But it's still based on a price. It presumes a price-based economic system. Nevertheless, supply and demand, using a currency to exchange goods and services. You still had various limits of private and personal property involved in all those systems. Technocracy proposed to do away with the price-based system altogether. So on one hand, even though you can see some kind of structural similarities between the totalitarian system of technocracy versus the totalitarian system of fascism, they're different. And where they're different is how they, at the very bottom of the economic system, one has supply and demand capitalistic economics, and the other has no supply and demand, an energy-based or resource-based economic system, and they're otherworldly to each other. You can't describe them in the same in the same sentence because they don't fit in the same sentence. They're otherworldly concepts. I'll say, by the way, people are wondering today why the world economically is upside down. There's things happening in the world today that fit no economic model that I ever studied, 45, 50 years ago in college. They just don't work anymore. Economists are scratching their head trying to write new laws and new things to explain what's going on in the world. It doesn't fit. Nobody, to my knowledge, in the economic world has considered that there are two economic systems fighting for control over the whole world right now. One is capitalism and one is technocracy. One's going to die and one's going to live. The question is, which one? Will capitalism survive, or will it be truly supplanted with technocracy? Because the two economic systems are they're not even oil and water. They're worse than that. They cannot exist. It's almost like matter and antimatter. They cannot exist in the same space. One will die and one will live.
Are you familiar with the Council on Foreign Relations War and Peace Studies project from 1939?
Not immediately familiar, but I have been in the past. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to the next question then. The Rockefeller family and their role in the League of Nations and the United Nations, and Columbia University, if you want.
Well, the Rockefellers had a deep association with all three. There were major benefactors to Columbia, major benefactors to starting the Council on Foreign Relations, the United Nations. I mean, they've been involved in just about everything in the last century that's plaguing us today, that's bothering us today. It wasn't surprising. Well, I'll tell you what was surprising. In that technocracy was housed in Columbia University for a time, it is surprising that there was no institutional money coming from like the Rockefeller family or some of the other big families of the day, because that was right up their alley. Columbia was right up their alley. In fact, the competitor to Columbia University in the local scene in New York was called the New School, which is even more radical than Columbia. And between the two of them, they kind of had a lock on radicalism and institutional money. But they never got any money. Technocracy never got any money from these people at all. They just were passed over until the 70s, of course.
Who created the New School for Social Research?
You'll have to refresh my memory. I
thought it was Thorsten Veblen.
I do. I want to say Thorsten Veblen was the founder of the New School.
Sure.
And he was the father, of course, of Technocracy. Well, one of the fathers of Technocracy.
And there's a strong Fabian socialist influence through the New School.
Absolutely.
And I believe the New School for Social Research, which is based in New York City, it produced one of the 9/11 committee commissioners. I believe it was Bob Kerrey went to the New School.
The New School has been a hotbed of radicalism ever since it was founded.
What do you think its purpose is in this country?
Well, it was certainly to spread the ideas that the radical ideas that they had cooked up along the way. They did a very good job of it. They were the first university in America to establish a teachers' college, where they trained, I don't know how many tens of thousands of teachers around the country, and they sent them out to, they end up in universities and high schools, everywhere, where they learned the techniques of teaching progressivism at the New School. And in fact, the New School that wasn't originally, it was a New School for Social Research or something like that. It was a different name, and originally they dropped it later. But they had a profound influence on the educational community in America, and I think probably we see a lot of it still today. That influence just kind of overwhelmed the world of academia with radical ideas and stuff and radical teachers.
Sure. And John D. Rockefeller gave $1 million to the Columbia Teachers College, and there was a lot of money flowing into those ideas of control. There was a Columbia School of Journalism. Rockefeller Center was originally leased from Columbia University before they purchased it. What do you know about the Rockefellers' role in the creation of the United Nations?
Well, they gave the land upon which the UN sits. They donated tons of money and resources over the years to it. The United Nations, a few years ago anyway, gave a huge accolade to the Rockefellers for the instrumental work they did to make the UN a reality. So their fingerprints all over it. That's about all you can say. They've had a profound influence on it, and I fully expect that the payback for the Rockefeller influence at the United Nations was achieved when the Trilateral Commission turned to the United Nations to use them as a contagion factor for Agenda 21, for sustainable development, for, et cetera, et cetera. And they have been the contagion that spread this to every corner of the planet today. So, was it a good move on their part to start this in the first place? I think they probably knew it was going to be a good thing in the end. They just kept throwing money at it, kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, I think part of the gambit was the creation of the League of Nations as a structure that was idealistic but was set up to fail, just so they could create the United Nations in a bigger, better, more proliferated form. I read your book Sunday, and on Saturday I had just finished doing the introductory montage for my podcast, and I was looking for evidence in video and audio form that the Rockefellers helped create the United Nations. I found this tremendous piece with Boutros Boutros-Ghali giving this, and it's just like the official United Nations thank you to the Rockefeller family. And then the next day when I was reading through your book, you found a parallel path that proves the exact same thing from different evidence. And I was like, this is awesome. I finally, because people, they're like, the United Nations is philanthropic. They're there to help people, and it's really a United Nations. I'm like, no. The people that were running the world were seeking a better graphical user interface, a better front end, because what they're doing is really ugly. They have to use public relations and words and images and propaganda to make it look pretty. And then we have to do this to tell people what's going on.
Yeah, that's right.
What is meant by the United Nations use of the term interdependence?
This was a word or a phrase that was, as far as I know, was originally coined, or at least let's say popularized, by the Trilateral Commission in 1973. They used the word interdependence all over their literature. That was the flip side to their new international economic order pitch. Because of that, in order to implement that, we had to honor the interdependence that was developing amongst nations. I don't think there was any public demand for that back in those days.
So under capitalism, that idea would not have flown, but in the controlled market, it flies.
They kept repeating interdependence over and over again until people believed it as being true. And so academics